This episode of the Uncharted Podcast is made possible ad-free by Innovative Veterinary Management Solutions. Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Andy Roark, and this is the Uncharted Podcast. Guys, I got a special guest today. It is Reese Gennarelli. He is the owner of Innovative Veterinary Management Solutions. He is also the owner of 2 veterinary practices. We'll talk about all that sort of stuff in a minute. We are breaking down a great question from the mailbag from a practice owner who's just overwhelmed. It's a 3-vet practice. She's one of the 3 vets. She's got young kids at home. She is working constantly. She is running on the hamster wheel. She feels like she can't get enough done to breathe, and she doesn't see a way out. How do we make this hamster wheel stop? Or is this just the way it's always going to be? Reese and I wade into it. He gives some great advice from his experience on how we tackle these things, how we start to break the days up into manageable chunks, and his best insight on getting this clinic systematized and this work delegated effectively. I think a lot of people are going to like it. I think a lot of people are going to take a lot of things away from this episode. Let's get into it.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, and I am here today with my friend, Reese Gennarelli. Reese, how are you?
Good, thank you, Andy. Thank you very much for having me today.
Oh, it is my pleasure. For those who don't know you, you are the founder of IVMS, which is Innovative Vet Management Solutions, and you also are the owner of 2 general practice veterinary hospitals in Vancouver. You have been an Uncharted member for a long time. We have had many, many conversations. People ask me about what's the best part of the Uncharted community, and I was like, it's the access to amazing people and the wonderful ideas that you get from their community. And so you are a living testament to that. I am really, really glad that you're here. I got a question in the mailbag, and I want to run it past you. Basically, it's kind of a work-life balance question, and then also at its heart, it's really very much a management question. I think with your experience with IVMS, I think that you'd be a really good person to talk about this. So let me just pause right here for one quick second. Do you want to just tell people, if they're not familiar with Innovative Vet Management Solutions, what is this company?
I'd like to have a business that runs itself.
Yeah.
And this is where IVMS was really born. IVMS started in a very different sphere, but as time went on, the landscape changed so much that I really focus on the one thing that I absolutely love to do, and that is to put systems in place.
That's a great way to describe it, and it 100% illustrates why I think you're the perfect person to tackle this mailbag question with me. So here we go. We get a question in the mailbag, and it goes like this. I'm a practice owner feeling completely overwhelmed, and I really need your advice. I run a companion animal exclusive practice with 2 other veterinarians, and I also have a young family at home. Despite my best efforts, I feel like I'm constantly spinning my wheels and never getting ahead. My days are a blur of patient appointments, managing staff, handling emergencies, and trying to keep up with administrative tasks. No matter how hard I work, I can't seem to find a moment to relax or feel like I'm making any real progress. How can I manage my time better and reduce this overwhelming stress? Is it possible to achieve a work-life balance in this field, or is this just part of the job? I love my practice and my family, but I'm worried about burning out. Thank you for any insight you can offer. And so that is from a practice owner asking the question. So let's go ahead. I want to run this like we run a regular Uncharted podcast. And so let's go ahead and start with Headspace, because I think if we're this practice owner, or if we're talking to this practice owner, I think perspective is absolutely make or break here. I think if you feel defeated and like there's no way out, then there is no way out. I think there's a lot we can do with this practice. I know we don't have a ton of details, but I think adjusting the mentality is key. Reese, what do you have in terms of Headspace? What do you got to get started with?
I find it funny, you talk about, this person talks about work-life balance, and you've called me as a potential expert, because I can tell you, I personally do not have work-life balance. Any time that I find a free time, I start a new project. That's just what I do. So my wife hates me right now.
I feel that way as well. Like, I stay really busy, but I think that this is important. I'm really glad you said this. Okay. A lot of times when people come to me and they're saying, I'm running around all the time, I don't have any work-life balance. My question back is, what do you really want? Like, what does success really look like for you in your heart of hearts? And so there was times when I was younger and I did not know myself as well. I would say, I want to sit on the beach. The truth is, Reese, I am terrible on the beach. I am an awful beach person. I am bored within 48 hours. I do not relax very well. 3 days of relaxing vacation is about as much as I can handle. I am that person who travels like up at the break of dawn. I want to go see what's going on. We're going to explore. We're going to be hiking. We're going to be doing things. I just don't relax well. Again, that's no shade on anybody else, but I know myself. There is no future for me where I relax all the time. It's just not who I am. I think my first question in Headspace is, okay, what do you want your days to really look like when you really are true and honest about it? I think a lot of us, we like to work. Now, we don't want to be overwhelmed and drowning, and I have 100% been to that place. I'm sure you have as well, where you're like, I'm drowning. I'm trying to keep my head above water. This is not fun. I do want to relax. Getting our headspace about what do we want this to really look like? Most people who get into practice ownership, and it's not that they're afraid of work or they never would have gotten here. So I think that that's true. I also think that when most of us talk about work-life balance, I think we're really talking about how we feel about work and how we kind of fit work into our life. It's really about work-life integration, especially when this person says she's got a young family. I get it. But you're talking to a guy too. When I had a young family, I was in practice, writing, traveling, speaking, and then being the most engaged dad that I could possibly be. And it was a lot of balls to juggle. And so I don't know. I think your point of I'm the wrong person to ask about work-life balance, I think that's true. I think the thing that I also look for from you is, as a person who gets an extraordinary amount of things done, how do you think about it? Do you ever feel like you're absolutely buried, Reese?
Absolutely. And I had to recently give up something that I actually love. I love coaching. I love coaching in America. You guys call it soccer. Where I come from is football. But I had to give it up. I've got projects coming up that I need to dedicate a lot of time on. And I just couldn't foresee myself long term or continue to coach the teams that I coach, as well as have time for my family, because my wife is like, hey, you need to be present. And I fully understand that.
Yeah.
So I had to give something up.
I'm a big believer that you can do anything you want. You just can't do everything that you want. Let me fluff your pillows for a second here and sort of say, one of the things I had in Headspace is, one of my favorite things occurred to me years ago is, I think that work-life balance happened 3 months ago. And what I mean when I say that is, you're working a schedule now because of what you committed to 3 months ago. And it will take you 3 months from now to get your schedule set up differently. I think a lot of times we go, I'm drowning. I need to be off tomorrow. And that's not reasonable or realistic. We got ourselves into this, and it took some time. It's going to take some time to get ourselves back out. I want to applaud you in that, looking at your schedule and what's coming down the pipes, and then saying, I'm going to have to step back from these things that I love because I see what's coming for me. That's a level of discipline I think a lot of people struggle with. I think I naively, when I was young, would have been like, yep, just give me more stuff and I'll figure it out. And only as I got older and more tired did I start saying, okay, if I know this is going to be happening, what adjustments do I need to make to be able to receive that increased workload? And so I think that was something I would say to the practice owner as well, is adjust your expectations. I think there's a lot of changes and things that we can make here. This is not going to be an overnight fix. There's not going to be much that you're going to be able to do right now. And that's going to change how tomorrow feels. But I really will tell you, I think when I do feel overwhelmed, if I make a plan to get out of that hole, I immediately feel better with nothing changing other than now I have a plan. And I believe that in 3 months from now, 4 months from now, that things will be significantly different. So yeah, that's it. I think there's a lot of working in your business versus working on your business that goes into the headspace as well.
Absolutely.
And when I'm listening to this, I'm looking at this appointment, and she's saying, I'm seeing appointments, I'm managing, I'm handling emergencies. This is the classic person who's both trying to work in their business and on their business. And it's really hard.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we were the exact same. We could have written this. For many people, when they first start out, we fly by the seat of our pants for 1 to 2 years until we figure it out. And we did that for a little bit. From there, once we understood how things need to work and efficiency and flow, we started to see team turnover because we couldn't adjust correctly or in time for that matter. We really had to step back and go, how do we fix this? And the simple answer was systems. Once we understood what systems would need to be in place, we can put the people in the right spot. For instance, my manager called me and said, hey, there's this problem with the schedule. This is the problem. This is my solution. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, go for it. I didn't have to come up with anything other than absolutely. Have a system where you encourage and lead your team or inspire your team to become better leaders, and you ask them to solve these problems themselves. And this is what systems are about.
I love that. It's funny when you say the manager calls you and says, hey, this is the problem. This is my solution. I don't think many people would think of that as a system. They're like, oh, well, he's clearly coached this person, or this person's a great communicator. But what I hear from you is this is the product of a system that we run and we put in place. And since we're talking through Headspace, Reese, when you talk, either from your own experience in your businesses, or when you're talking and coaching other practice owners, things like that, what are the biggest hangups that people have when they start to try to systematize? What are the mental hurdles that they have? So I know there are some. I've got a list of a couple of them, but before I put my own sort of framing on this, what do you see?
There's three big ones. The first one is I don't have time to do all this. The second one is they'll never do it as good or as well as I would do. The third is letting go of that vine. And that is, those three things combined is, I call it TNT, grenade. You're preventing growth, you're preventing forward motion. And I feel that when I speak to owners that have this system, the biggest hurdle was the buying of, yes, we can have the time to do this. The buying of delegation, the buying of my team can do this, maybe not as good, but good enough for you to do the things that you love. And that's just effective delegation and letting go of that vine.
Yeah, so letting go of the vine, that was the big one that I had starred and circled and underlined. Is there's a lot of feelings that this is my baby and this business is a reflection on me, and it has to be done the way that I would do it. And people really struggle to let go and to allow others to run the business. And I hate it, but oftentimes we end up in this position of you can delegate and let other people do this, or you can burn yourself out and crash down.
Yep.
But there's really not.
Absolutely.
Those are your two options, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think we have to figure out how to get our heads around that. There's been a decent amount of research in the last year or so that's come out that's really pointed at veterinarians and said, you guys are super neurotic as a group, and neuroticism and perfectionism, and it's a big driver of mental health challenges in our industry. I see it a lot with owners as well, and I'm not saying that this person has this at all, but it's just something that I've seen enough of. I always put it on the table and say, hey, if it's going to be a problem to not have our hands in every aspect of this business as it grows, I think we need to start thinking about how to be okay with that. And it's definitely a change in perspective. Sometimes this might be a job for the therapist, and just say, hey, I need to get better at letting this go a little bit. Can you help me? Perfect is the enemy of done.
It's not about letting go completely, though. You still have some sort of control and input. It's just about delegating the biggest part of it. This is what I need, this is what I want. What are your opinions? What are your ideas to make it better? We always want to make sure that we give that freedom of creativity to our team, find out, hey, this is my idea, but if you have a better one, go for it, as long as it gets done.
I think the wording that you just used is important. I think holding on to the idea that you still have power here. And if things, this is a big one for me, if things start to go off the rails, we can circle the wagons and fix this. We absolutely can. I think a lot of times people think, if I give this to this other person, I am now bound to wherever they go with it. And if it's terrible, there'll be nothing that I can do. And you go, that's ridiculous. That's not how this is. We're going to try some things. We're going to get them back. I want to circle back around one more time to what you said about the amount of time it takes. I think that's really important. I think that a lot of people like to believe I'm overwhelmed and I'm going to implement a system and my life will immediately get easier, or I'm going to delegate and things will get easier. And in my experience, I'm curious if you agree with this, the process of delegating or implementing a system is a significant amount of work itself.
Yeah.
You have to go through the process of handing this thing away, which is harder work and takes more time than you just doing it yourself. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And then as they start to delegate or they start to build systems, they're working even harder than before. And the worst case scenario is they do 90% of that work and then they get frustrated, give up, take all the work back, don't delegate it, hurt feelings, and then they're right back where they started. So does that sound true to you?
It is. It's very true. And I always say that this is not a quick fix. This is going to take anywhere from, as you say, 4 months, but I say 6 months to set expectations. If it happens earlier, great.
Yeah. That's all I've got for Headspace. Do you want to go ahead and start transitioning over to action steps? Because I really want to start to hear about this sort of 6-month expectations. And then I think that's a fascinating idea is we've got this place where the owner doesn't want to go to work. And then 3 months later, the whole vibe has changed. So anyway, anything else from you for Headspace?
No, I think we need to set expectations of what they are wanting from themselves.
So you're talking about here sort of a first action step, setting expectations. Are you talking about the practice owner setting expectations for themselves or the practice owner setting expectations for the team?
No, for themselves. When I say that, I mean, what is your expectation? If I walked into your place tomorrow, what is your expectations and what's it going to solve? Because if you're saying that by the next day, I'm going to have all this free time, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You need to understand that if you're going to put some systems in place, you need to ensure that your team is going to be trained on your thinking, on your vision, on your systems. That's expectations that I'm trying to say. Not for your team, but you.
Yeah.
You need to understand the work that you're going to have to put into that is going to set you and your team up for success.
I totally get the idea that the amount of time it takes in order for me to download my philosophy, the way that I see my practice in my mind into my team, that's going to take time. What kind of expectation setting do you do, Reese, as far as if you said that to me and I said, it's a 3-doctor practice, I'm one of the 3 doctors, and you say, Andy, you're going to have to work harder to get this message across and dispersed out into the group so that they can then carry the torch and you can relax. Do you give people an idea? Do you tell them, if you're doing something like we're talking about here where the team has a long way to go, are you telling them to plan on working hard for a year? You know, you said this one practice you're working with is at 3 months. That seems amazingly short to me. So how do you say to a person who says, I feel like I'm running around with like a chicken with my head cut off, and you're like, well, you're going to need to keep running for a bit longer. How do you have that conversation?
I want to circle back to letting go of that vine. You need to have the expectation of, you need to be able to let go of that vine.
Yeah.
And in order for this to work, that's what you're going to have to do. Breaking down that vine, letting go on that vine, and putting your knowledge onto paper. But while you do that, you're going to inspire and lead your team and give them the resources to be able to pick up what you've just put down. The expectations of the next, I would say, 2 months is going to be uneasy. It is going to be challenging. There's going to be a time when you go, are we actually going to get somewhere? The answer is you're not going to get an answer. So you're not going to get the light at the end of the tunnel in 3 months. That I can guarantee you. We didn't really see it until, I would say, a year, because we had so much to do, so many things that we wanted to do. And after a year, we were on not autopilot, but the ship was sailing in the direction, and all we had to do was change the sails a little bit to make it finer, sharper, faster, add some trinkets, some dazzles and beads, and however the team wants to design it and label it. But the ship was still sailing in the right direction. But it took some time to rebuild the systems, not rebuild, but create systems, but rebuild our team that aligned with our vision, our core values, our why. That's a big thing right now. And this workshop that we've got is going to create all that. It's going to create your why. It's going to create how. And then we're going to find out who is the people that's going to drive that bus for you. And that's all part of the experience and part of the workshop that we have.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the workshop and when it's coming up and where people can find this.
I come to you. I spend 4 days with you, not 4 days at the same time, but break down who's who and finding out who is going to actually be the leaders of your team that's going to drive your vision forward. And you may have core values, but I'll ask you, when was the last time you created them?
Yeah.
How were they created? Are the people that created them with you still there? Do you have different visions today? Is it on the same path? Do your core values drive your goals? Because every decision that we ever made is being aligned with our core values. Every hire, every new protocol, every new decision, every new direction, it's all tied to our core values.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I completely agree with going in and before we start radically changing the way the practice is running is getting a clear vision of what are we doing here? What do we care about? What does success look like? Reese, when you get into this, and we've gone through the hard work, and we're pushing ourselves to let go and to be able to make some changes and reimagine what the practice can be and what we're trying to accomplish. How do you start to take this person's chaotic life and break it up into pieces, right? She says, I'm doing management, I'm doing these emergencies, I'm seeing appointments, I'm refilling the paper towel dispenser, I'm taking my kids to daycare and picking them up. And how do you start to help someone who's just sort of sprinting around? How do they start to get perspectives and break their day up into how do you even know what to try to give away first? How do you know what to quit? What guidance do you sort of give people on that?
We use a delegation quadrant. As you say, you want to break it, the things that you absolutely love doing, you're the best at, you're awesome at, and you want to keep. And you look at things that, it goes all the way down to things you absolutely hate doing and you wish you could give it away, but there's no one to take it as you think. We go through the process, but we also go through another layer of how much does that actually cost you to do? If that costs you more than your opportunity cost, delegate that out. Because if your opportunity cost is 4 times what you can make than what that actually costs you, you don't need that. Get that out.
Yeah.
Right? And I wanted to use your time that's effective, that's going to generate the most money. And if it's not the most money, at least I want you to do something that you absolutely love. And you know what? If that is taking your kids to the recital or gymnastics, I want to focus on what's important to you and your business and your family, in my case, anyway.
So it's a combination of breaking up into how excited are you about this? I do something sort of similar. I sort of teach people. I do it things I love, things that only I can do, and everything else, and make it into the 3 columns. And I am really picky about what goes into the only I can do this, because I think a lot of us tell ourselves, "Oh, I'm the only one who could do this." Like that's not true at all. You need to train someone, but that is not something you have to do. And then the everything else column, I generally start looking in there and what can I take off my plate here? I have not given thought to the idea of what value do I get out of these things, or what does it cost me to do these things? I think that's an interesting way to start putting it in perspective. It's funny. The other thing I would say to this, and I don't know if you feel this way, Reese, but like when I started doing that sort of delegation exercise years and years ago, I always rolled my personal life into that exercise. When I would go through, and it always took me a couple of days to track everything I was doing, because you forget, you can't sit down and write everything you do. I always use a notebook page, but I would sort of keep it on my desk and I would sort of keep it around. And whenever there were things like, oh yeah, I got to do this. Yeah, I have to write the practice newsletter. Oh yeah. I always have phone calls at the end of the day. And I would just keep thinking of these things that I can't not do them. They have to get done. So they got added to the list. And so I would sort of keep adding these and taking this amount of time to sort them all out. And then after I got them all, it then became this question of like, well, what can I give away? What do I want to give away? And sort of start to break them out and move them off the plate. But that whole process of collecting was a big thing for me, about being honest about all the things that I was doing. I think most of us, we don't really think about all the balls that we're juggling. And sometimes when you start doing them, it becomes really obvious, really fast. This is not a good use of my time.
There's a simple exercise that anyone can do right now, actually, for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks for that matter. Write down every single thing you do, everything. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Write it down on a piece of paper, have a notebook next to you everywhere you go. And if it is an answer in an email, or in one email here, and then you've taken a phone call, you write those 2 things down. If you're going back to an email, write that down. What you'll start to find is that you're not using your time efficiently.
Yeah.
Or effectively for that matter. But if you were able to look at that and analyze that and go, okay, I'm going to spend an hour just doing emails on this day, or every day, 9 to 10, as an example. And then you start to break down your day and categorize it into sections, because your brain is not going to be bouncing from one problem solving to another in different categories.
Schedule blocking is such a key tool. I am such a believer in that. I learned a long time ago that the times when I'm just trying to do multiple things are the least useful times of my day. I feel bad and I'm not good. And I know a lot of people, especially if you're on the floor and also in management, it is so hard to block yourself and say, this is what I'm doing, because people will always come to you and say, oh, we need your help. Oh, if you could just do this. But I really believe the ability to have a set time where you do, say, management or administration, that this is the time I'm doing this. I think it's absolutely really, really critical. I think one of the hardest exercises for people who are making this transition is the boundary setting piece, where they have to tell their team, no, I know you see me here. I am not here. I know you're talking to me now, but you're not talking to me now. I need you to believe that I am not here, and I need you to handle this yourself. And it's frustrating to the team because they know that you could fix their problem for them. And that is absolutely the fastest way for them to get a resolution to the pain point that they're faced with.
Yeah.
It's not good for you. It never works out. It's not sustainable for you to be the problem solver for everyone, because it goes back to the in the business and on the business. That locks you into the business, and you will never get the time to work on the business.
Yeah, that's right. And going back to the same example I said to you before, my manager calls me and goes, hey, this is a problem with the schedule. Here's my solution. If it had have been, hey, there's a problem with the schedule, can you just solve this real quick? I probably could, but it's not my role anymore.
Yeah.
I've delegated that out, and that's your role. And if there's something that you are having trouble making a decision on, I'm there. But that one problem or that one call was one out of maybe 50 that didn't make it, that couldn't get through.
Yeah.
I've just cut away 49 and I got that one.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Well, I think that's important to note is that never goes away. I have gotten frustrated in the past when I'm like, why are people reaching out to me? And somebody explained to me one time, and I think this is true. In a well-functioning organization, as you move up, the problems that you get handed, they get harder, and they should get harder, because the easier problems should be handled by other people. If you're the CEO and people are like, hey, look, the paper towels are out in the bathroom, that's a poorly functioning organization. You as the CEO should be handed the problem that no one else can solve. And it's going to be a terrible, hard problem, but that's why you're at the top. The same thing is true as the practice owner. I get frustrated when people give me easy problems, because I'm like, why are you asking me that? What lapse in systems, lapse in training have we had that has allowed this ridiculous problem to rise up to the point that I need to intervene? I will say, on behalf of my team, generally whenever I say that to them, they say, Andy, it's because of this. And I'm like, oh, that's much more difficult than I thought it was. And that's how they bring me back to earth. But it really is that the idea, I think, is important, that you're never going to be problem free. In fact, you're always going to have hard problems, but you're going to have 1/10 of the problems that you've had in the past, and thus it's much more manageable.
Absolutely. We look at our weekly team meetings, and we used to have like a gargantuan list of things that we need to solve. On average, it'd be like 40 things. As we got better at delegation, as we got better at uplifting people and providing training and resources, that now is shrunk to 7 things on a weekly team meet, to the point where they're not even management related. They're actually medicine related, and I am so bored with that stuff. And I was like, hey, can you just let me know when I'm involved? They said, no, you're always involved, because we need your opinion on this.
Yeah.
And we'll go into having your team call you out on everything. Much can call me out on everything, but it's safe to do so.
Yes.
And as part of this culture that we hope that we are going to build together with people, and find out the why and how we're going to set a workplace that people want to be a part of, and also include themselves in the decisions that you're going to create together.
We had the exact same experience. I remember sort of getting my business organized, and at the beginning, these meetings it was impossible to get them done in an hour. And the checklist that we would go through of the things we were working on, it was endless. And I remember people saying, this is terrible. This is terrible. We didn't even get to half of the stuff that's on the list. And I remember internally feeling like, I agree, this is terrible. I can't believe this is going to work. But externally, I was like, you know what? We're going to trust the process. We're going to continue to work. We're going to continue to work through the list. And sure enough, it takes about 3 months. And 3 months is this weird time period, because when you're in the moment and things are hard and you're working really hard, 3 months feels like a long time. But when you zoom out and say, I transformed my business and the way my practice runs in 3 months, it feels like an absolute blip. And so I completely agree with your idea of, like, you start laying these things down, and God, it feels like you're standing at the bottom of Mount Everest. It's just one foot in front of the other. Looking at these things, and we start to change the culture, and we start to hand things off to our team, we're going to start looking at the things that we want to take off of our plate and start to intentionally give them to other people and sort of make this breathing space for us. just in broad strokes, in your mind, is this usually done as a big visionary meeting with the team where we say, guys, we're going to be making big changes? Or is this a thing where I start to say, hey, I've got my list. I'm looking at the things that don't make sense for me to be doing, things that I don't enjoy. I'm looking at my team. I'm looking at their competencies and things that they could take. And I'm going to just start quietly handing things off to people and working with them and just getting the ball rolling without making a big production that involves everyone, on the team coming together and rah, rah, cheer, cheer. Do you have strong feelings on that? Is it always one way and not the other? How do you start to communicate these things out?
Yeah, what you just said is really actually a blend of what the process is. So once everyone calls it an org chart, we call it an accountability chart, but once you build that out and you find out who's going to be in the best position to use those strengths and find out the weaknesses, when you start to build out what that role looks like and what you're in charge of, what your responsibilities of, once you start to do that and you pair it to your delegation, everyone has a delegation in the leadership team. So once you start to do your delegation quadrant, you start to go, it doesn't fall into my category anymore. This actually falls into another category. And we've already built the accountability chart. Then we've done the delegation chart. Then you start to go backwards and go, okay, this is things that I still dislike doing, but I'm okay at doing. And you go, oh, you know what? We can move that to this seat. And that person can also take this. And it's like, okay, so now that we've got people in the right seats, this is what your responsibilities are. And is everybody okay with that?
How much backtracking do you feel like most people kind of have to do in this process? I'll be honest with you. I have come up with beautiful organizational charts and move towards them. And then, somebody leaves or the world changes or new initiatives come in, and then they just kind of reshuffle and this gets moved over here and that gets moved over there. I've always wondered, I'm like, is that a sign that I have not been as organized as I needed to be in the past? Or is this sort of fairly continuous moving around of responsibilities as people grow and change and evolve? Is that something that's fairly normal that we should just expect?
We haven't really needed to change what the chart looks like, nor the responsibilities. If anything, we have changed the person in that seat, or we've actually hired specifically for that role. There are some things that we have on our roles that we, dislike. You can delegate that. Hey, can you do this for me? But you're still in charge of that. You're still going to oversee that task. It's just you've delegated that portion out.
Yeah.
And that's also okay, but you're still in charge of it. And that's probably the most important part, being accountable for that role, or task or responsibility.
Well, once you take the tasks and responsibilities and you kind of roll them together, essentially you're making a job description. That's as you say that and say, we switched out the people there. But it seems to me that it makes hiring exponentially easier when you say, we have this clearly defined bundle of tasks, and now it's a job description. So dude, that totally makes sense. Reese, thanks so much for being here. You are amazing. Tell me where people can find you. Where can they learn more? Where can they learn about IVMS? Yeah, what's the best place for people to kind of engage with you if they're like, that guy's really interesting, I'd like to hear more? Yeah,
sure. Of course, like everywhere, are the usual social channels, but my website is probably the best, or LinkedIn. It's at www.ivmsolutions.org is my website. I have Instagram and Facebook as well. The LinkedIn page is Innovative Veterinary Management Solutions. It's a page. You'll see me there anyway. Please send me a request, chat. I'll chat to anybody, even your dog or cat if they can talk. So please drop me a line if you have any questions, issues, concerns. I'm there to help. For your listeners on your podcast, I have a special offer. If they come to me through you, there is a $500 discount just for your listeners, Andy.
Thank you, Reese. That's very, very kind. I'll link all that up in the show notes so people can find it and check it out. And that's it. That's what we got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Reese for being here. Thanks to you guys for being here. If you have questions for us, send them to us in the mailbag.